started, guys? So when you're a speaker, sometimes you have technical difficulties, right? Did anybody see me try to go out the door here a few minutes ago? Couldn't get it to open, right? So what you're going to have is how you react. You can't control everything that happens to you, but how you react to it is going to be very important for your life. I mean, some of you are already finding this out, but I have a really nice presentation for you. If you guys want it, unfortunately it's not opening in this system. My fault. I should have gotten here earlier. Then we probably would have been able to go through it a little simpler. But I'll email it to whoever wants it. So I'm going to write this down or put this in your phone. It's forrest@forresthamilton.com. Forrest is one R, not like gum. It's F-O-R-E-S-T, Hamilton. So forrest@forresthamilton.com. And I'll email you the entire keynote presentation on influence. So I'll do it right now. If we can get it running, great. If not, raise your hand if you've been to one of my talks before. Anybody here? Oh, that's first class. Okay, cool. So I do this twice a year on how to influence. I'll kind of give you a little breakdown on who I am. Basically, you got almost an hour with me. And then what you do with this hour is totally up to you. One of my slides says, is it worth an hour for you to give me 1 hour to help change your life? If it's not, that's okay. I understand your world's going crazy out there. You got school, you got family, everybody's got problems, everybody's got issues. But what if I did have something, this guy that's coming to talk to you, this passport, what if I had something that could make your life better? Would you want it? Raise your hand if you'd want it. And then those that don't either aren't listening, and that's okay too. It's not gonna hurt my life if you don't get something from it. And I'm not being a jerk here. I know I've been to I've met with some of the greatest minds in the world, and I got some things from them, and then from others I got nothing. And it wasn't because they didn't give me something great. It was because I was listening to my own CD of negative thoughts. I was already attached to my obstacles and to my failures, and so I couldn't get the good stuff from there. Then in other times, there's a spot in the Bible that says, "Seek and ye shall find." I'm not up here to preach, right? But it's really accurate. What I mean by that is, if you've got something in your mind and it's really clear and you really want it and you seek it, you're going to find it. What happens in your mind is, as you start to attach to things, as you start to make something very important, there's actually a part of your brain called the reticular cortex. It's this little finger-like thing that pretty much runs your life. We don't know much about it though, we don't really study a whole lot about it, but it's the thing that you plant certain things inside of your head, and then your life becomes exactly what you think about. So I read a book, I'm going to back up just a little bit, and this will help you, those of you that maybe aren't really all that engaged, or who's this guy, hopes to get you to know. I attended this university in 1994. Most of you probably weren't born then. But I grew up in Washington State, a little bitty town. My dad was born here in Beaumont. He was raised in Waco. He played football for Baylor. He was just your all-American guy. You know, tall, handsome guy, all-American football player, journalism degree. Just a charming guy. And then he went to Vietnam. Anybody have any relatives that went to Vietnam? A few? Okay. Not a real fun. Not that any wars are fun. This one was tough. He won the lottery. He gets to watch on TV. Watching TV, all of a sudden there's his name and his number, and he had to go. This is part of this draft where he had to go to war. So he went from all-American guy to being in a helicopter with a big gun and shooting at people that he didn't hate. And that was really hard for him. He got shot down 5 times while he was over there, in country, between Chu Lai and Da Nang, different areas over there. He was the only survivor in 3 out of the 5 crashes. So imagine that for a second. You hear that, just think about that. You're in a country you don't really know. You're shooting at people that you don't dislike. They're shooting back at you. Thank you. They're shooting back at you, and you get shot down. Well, you just got shot down by somebody that was shooting at you, which means you're pretty close to probably where they just shot at you. Now you're the only survivor in 3 out of those crashes. So now you got to trek all the way back to your LZ, your landing zone. You got it through people that are trying to kill you. The hardest part, he said, wasn't getting shot at. It was leaving his buddies behind. It was this thing called survivor complex. Why did I live when they didn't? These people were better men than me. And you go through this part where war just really destroys you. So he came home very broken. He was riddled with bullets. He had all kinds of shrapnel. They're still pulling shrapnel out of his feet 40 years later. He had riddled with guilt. He was angry. He was sad, but he thought, I'm going to give it one more shot. He had a whole world at his, his beck and call. When he went over, came back, and nobody would give him a job. He went into the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, I think the PI, whatever, big newspaper over there, and this lady's looking at his resume, and she says, gosh, great resume, I love your articles, some of the things you've written. Wait a minute, you were in Vietnam? And she literally spit on him. Spit on him, you're a baby killer. And he's like, I didn't ask to go. So think about this life, right? Everybody feels sorry, it's sad, but he snapped. He didn't fight her, he just became a mountain man. He went up into the woods in Washington State, went completely off the grid. Well, that's kind of in now. You start to see TV shows about people going off the grid, it's kind of cool. It wasn't that cool back then. He delivered me in the woods when I was born. Literally no running water, no electricity until I was 15 years old. Just him and my mom out there. We had chickens and rabbits and goats and pigs. I mean, it was an interesting upbringing. But mind you, we're in a little town. Anybody here of Redmond, Washington? There's a few companies in Redmond people know of, like Microsoft, Nintendo, Amazon. I mean, these are in this is a town outside of Seattle. So our area was a bedroom community for these massive companies. So all the kids that would get on the school bus, they were dressed up in their Nikes and their polos, and I'm, no exaggeration, I'm wearing buckskins. Does anyone know what a buckskin is? It is a skin off of a deer that has been dried and tanned and cured, and it's got little buttons on it that are made out of antler. I had moccasins on my feet, and I stunk. I was the stinky kid. I smelled like chickens and rabbits and goats. I mean, you don't have a shower, right? There was one place that we bathed, it was called Stossel Creek, and it was about 30 degrees, right? So it wasn't really fun to bathe in since you're up in the mountains anyway. So that's when I'd get on the school bus, I'd go to sit down right here on the school bus, and everybody would go move 5 or 6 seats from me. So at that age, it doesn't matter how much your parents tell you, you're awesome. You can do anything. Yeah, right. You're so smart. I hear you. You're handsome. That's not what every kid in the school thinks. I mean, I was the one that, there was the nerds and the geeks and all these little cliques inside of the schools. I was the one that made all of them look popular, right? And it was not fun. This is not a woe is me story. I just want you to understand the psychology of my mind at the time said I had it rough. When I get home from school, I literally had 0 friends. But when I got home from school, I had to go to work. Because I was like another arm. We had a little portable sawmill. So my birthday present on my 8th birthday was a chainsaw. My dad got me so I could help him with our little sawmill. And then, this one kid took a chance. His name's Jared. Still to this day, my best friend in the world. He got on the bus and he came and sat by me. I thought, here we go. Here comes the picking, right? They're going to do something. I'm going to have my underwear pulled up over my head or something, right? And he says, hey, want to play a game? Sure, go ahead. Give it to me. He goes, no, there's just this little game you do. He takes his pencil and there's paper and he draws a line like a little soccer goal and he pushes down on the end of the pencil and draws a little line. And he draws a little ball. At the end of it, he goes, okay, your turn. I think, this kid actually wants to play with me. I'm like maybe 7 or 8 at the time. And I'm like, okay. So we played and boy, it was like the greatest feeling. The influence this kid had on me was unbelievable. Doesn't matter how good your parents are sometimes. Doesn't matter how good your circumstances or bad your circumstances. Another human being can have an influence on you like nobody else. Because they can change and shift the way that you think. Which means you can have that influence on somebody else. This isn't a made-for-TV special here where I'm trying to make you, go change the world. But I'm going to give you some tools today that can literally make you change the world, help you change the world. Influence is a superpower. This kid unlocked something in me. He was the best man at my wedding, I was the best man at his wedding. Well, long story short, I started to build confidence from this kid. I started to be a better version of me because I wanted to impress him. I wanted to do things for him. There's this thing called reciprocity, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Anybody know about the law of reciprocity? Imagine a scale, one of those old-timey scales. And if somebody does a favor for you, says, oh, you look really nice today, well, that's a favor. That's weight on the reciprocity scale. And without even thinking about it, subconsciously, your mind says, I need to do something back for them. And so until you've done that nice thing back for them, the scales are uneven. And there's a debt that feels like it needs to be owed. Well, he did that. I'm still paying back the debt to him and his family. His family took me in, basically treated me like I was one of their own kids. Gave me a somewhat normal upbringing. So, fast forward, I get into freshman year of high school, I have never seen sports on TV at this point. I have no clue about much in the world other than living in the woods and then what I've learned at school. So I get to high school and I think I want to play some sports, but we don't have any money for cleats, we don't have money for a glove. Well, the coach sees some talent, plus I wasn't the biggest guy ever, but I was somebody who, we have a car, so if I was going to go somewhere, I was running, right? Sorry, it's a Forrest Gump joke. And so, I could run for days, and I was pretty fast. So the coach is like, hey, I'll buy your cleats, I'll do this, we've got some sponsorships, whatever. So they hand me this playbook, and the playbook has all the positions in it and all the plays. I don't know anything, so I think you're just supposed to memorize it. So I memorized every single play, got a little book, started studying it. So we get to game time, it's about 3 games into the season, and coach says, hey, who knows the running back plays, because our running back got hurt. I'm like, oh, I do. And he's like, how do you know him? You're playing wide receiver and defensive back. And I was like, well, I know them all. He goes, oh, really? What do you do on ISO lead to the right? And I tell him, and he's like, well, what do you do with halfback toss on this side? Oh, okay. All right, well, you're going to come with us. If nothing else, you can tell the kids that don't listen very well what the plays are. 2 more running backs get hurt, they put me in the game. I'm this little kid among these giants, and they're all looking at me. Man, what are you doing? Don't drop the ball. 2 touchdowns. Then 2 more touchdowns the next game. Then 3 touchdowns the next game. Now I'm a kick returner. All of a sudden, you guys are lifting me up that used to beat me down. All of a sudden, I go from the stinky kid to homecoming king within a matter of a few months because of some touchdowns. So I thought I got everything I wanted. I thought that all I wanted was for these kids to accept me, for the cheerleaders to like me, for this, and I got exactly what I wanted, like this. And then that's where I did become a made-for-TV movie. I left my one best friend behind because he wasn't that cool, in school. So now I'm hanging out with these kids, and I was like, what am I doing? Right? I'm not returning his calls. By the time I was a senior, I pretty much had gone through a midlife crisis. I had figured out that popularity isn't everything, that relationships are. And I was really mad. My mom helped me. She said, well, would you have done something different? If you were the popular kids, would you have done something different? Would you have been mean, or would you have been kind? I would have been kind. Are you sure? Yeah. I thought about it now. People will only do what their subconscious patterns teach them to do, unless they make a decision. Unless they make a decision for their life. So let me see if I can get this connected. I'll take you through some specific notes here. All right. Just click. I'll just okay. So this next part. If you're not careful, you're gonna think I'm bragging. I'm not. What I want more than desperately, as I was driving over here, I've stood in front of audiences of 10,000. I've been on television shows. I've made movies. I can tell you some pretty cool stuff I've done with my life once my mindset shifted. What I want more than anything is for one of you, I'd rather it be all of you, but at least one of you to take something from this and think to yourself, man, I can do something like that. Not, oh, this guy's bragging. I'm not, I promise. This stuff means nothing to me other than what it can do for you and for people like you. I've hired probably 10 people from the years that I've spoken here. 6 of them still work for me. They make a lot of money, but more importantly than making a lot of money working in the business I'm in, they've changed their lives. I've taken them with me all over the country, all over the world. They've gotten to meet people that were their heroes before. They've gotten to go break down walls and pedestals in their mind they thought they'd never accomplish. Well, that isn't because I'm special. It's because at some point I said I was tired. I was tired of having my circumstances dictate what my success was. So, let's see, So this is me here. Anybody hear of this guy, Brian Tracy? Anybody see any books? Okay. So Brian Tracy's written like 60 bestsellers. This guy did not graduate high school, flunked out of his junior year of high school because he couldn't, his English teacher said he could barely read or write, kind of thing. Now he's got 60 #1 New York Times bestsellers. I mean, he changed his mindset, and that changed what he felt like he could accomplish. Check out his story at some point. Well, he was like a hero to me. This guy over here is Nick Nanton, another really amazing guy. He's got multiple Emmys, got Grammys. He's the president of a company called the National Academy of Best-Selling Authors. This is his father-in-law, J.W. Dix, who's an attorney and basically attorney to the stars kind of thing. They're giving me an award here that is called the Quilly, or the Golden Quill. And it's an award you win when you get a best-selling book. So here's where influence starts. There was a time where I didn't think I would ever have something like this. I got a couple of books now. There's one of me and Brian Tracy. That's back when I had long hair. Long hair don't care. And then this is another one of me and Brian Tracy and a few other of my heroes. And I've done another one since then. I didn't think I was capable of even writing to where somebody would want to read it, much less have bestsellers. But somewhere along the way, I decided to start studying. And I read a Brian Tracy book at about 19 years old. It was called The Psychology of Achievement. I recommend it for everybody. In it, he said some words that I said early on in this talk. I said, "You become what you think about." I said, whatever. If that was true, everybody'd be rich. And then he covers it in the next sentence. He says, I know you're probably thinking, yeah, right. He says exactly what I was thinking in this book. And I realized that we are the result of our dominant thoughts. The things that we think, where you are in your life, is because of your actions, your inactions, and your reactions. The actions you've taken, the reactions to things that have happened to you, and the things that you didn't do. That seems pretty logical, right? But what happens is, most of you, most of the world, is living in a subconscious cloud. Not much happens in your day, in your life. It's kind of just like rats in a maze. It doesn't mean that you guys aren't living awesome lives and that you're not going to. This is just something that I've found for myself and for others, is that you just kind of get up and go through it, and maybe you've got some goal. Maybe you've never written down your goals. Maybe your goals are really, really tiny. Maybe your goals are huge. I don't know. The average, though, they say it's less than 3% of the people in the world will ever actually write down their life goals. Maybe it's different. Raise your hand if you've ever written down your life goals, like a list of your life goals. So a little more than 3%, but maybe 7%, 10% max. And then of the people that wrote down their life goals, did you write down anything that would help you achieve those? Maybe. I didn't. That wasn't my thing for a long time. But then one day I decided I wanted something. Why is currency? Why is influence important? It's life's true currency. It helps you take someone that has zero interest in you and your dreams and turns them into a raving fan, an employer, even a powerful ally that moves mountains for you. Brian Tracy was a guy on a book, on a cassette tape. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but I used to listen to his cassette tapes when I was getting ready for work. And what he said inspired me, which is the beginning to influence, is inspiration. You have to learn to inspire yourself. So how do you do that? Imagine a world where there's no obstacles or problems, that you don't have access to multiple solutions. So here's the process. You caress them. It's kind of corny, right? Commitment. This is for yourself, number one. And then, so think of it as a self tool, and then think of it as somebody outside. I don't care if it's a girlfriend that you're wishing you could have a girl go on a date with you. I don't care if it's an employer. In my case, mine was I wanted to meet Brian Tracy. I had become pretty successful applying some of his tools in my life. I had made my first million a long time before I was 30 years old, and I've done some really cool things in my life. But I thought, I want to meet this guy and I want to get to know him. So I said, all right, commitment. If they commit, they'll submit. It's not like you're submitting them down in a wrestling move. No, they'll basically, if you can get somebody to commit to you, if you'll commit to yourself, then you'll let go of the things that are holding you back. You'll let them go. You'll only be able to have the clearly defined purpose that you have. So C, commitment. A, authority. These are also the 6 methods of influence by a guy named Robert Cialdini. But authority. Study, learn, and understand the value of authority. So I'm thinking of this Brian Tracy. How can I get this guy to commit? He doesn't know who Forrest Hamilton is. How do I get to know this guy? So I call his office in Solana Beach, California. Guys, Brian there. And they're like, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I just need to tell him thank you. And they're like, oh, well, you can send an email. I'm like, no, I need to talk to this guy. I just need to tell him, give me 5 minutes on the phone. And they're like, oh, it's $50,000 an hour. I said, I'm sorry? Yeah, his fee is $50,000 an hour. So, like, for real, or you're just saying that to get me off the phone? No, real. Like, you can look at the website, whatever. I'm like, well, I don't really want to pay anything. I just want to tell him thank you for helping change my life. We'll go to one of his events. He speaks to millions of people a year, all over the world. It's like, I don't want to be a face in the crowd. I want to meet him. Well, sorry, I can't help you. You can pay the money, or basically you're out of luck. So I spent the next 3 months working, utilizing a lot of these tools to get to know his office staff. The main piece was reciprocity and endearingness are the two things that I use the most. Endearing, I was likable to them. I was somebody that had a genuine story. I didn't have an agenda where I was trying to get something for me. Who knows the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Anyone? Go ahead.
The difference between persuasion
and manipulation.
Manipulate it if you want something for yourself. Persuasion is like, okay, I want you to put me out here.
That's good. It's really good. So my favorite definition comes from a guy named Zig Ziglar. It says, manipulation is when you do something without regard to whether it benefits the other party. See, manipulation isn't always bad. Malicious manipulation is when you're doing something to hurt somebody else and to get something for yourself. But most people manipulate without thinking about it. When a potter manipulates clay, he's not doing something evil, right? He's manipulating the clay into a better shape. But manipulation is when you're doing it for yourself without regard to whether it benefits or hurts somebody else. Persuasion is when you do something that has the benefit of both parties in mind. So if I persuade you to take an action in your life, I want it to happen something for you and something for me. Benevolence is when you just do something whether you worry about it, where there's no benefit back to me. But the key to this is, his staff recognized I was not trying to manipulate them. That I really just wanted to get to know this guy a little bit, to tell him thank you personally. And all of a sudden, they got on my side. They went from fielding all these calls to, hey Forrest, why don't you try this? And then I started doing little things, like instead of ordering some Brian Tracy CDs or MP3s or whatever, videos on his website, I would order it directly through them, so it created more personal context. So I just had this desire to meet him, right? And I wasn't giving up. Tenacity was key. So one day, 3 months in, this woman, Taya, calls me and she says, hey, Brian wants to meet you. I'm like, whatever. She's like, no, really, he wants to meet you. He said he's so impressed by your persistence. I said, okay, so what's the deal? She goes, you got to be in New Mexico on Friday. This is like Monday. And I'm like, well, what is it? It's an inner circle. He's like, well, what's it going to cost me? Now I'm thinking I'm getting trapped, right? Well, it's $100,000 a year for 12 people that are in his inner circle. I said, I don't want to pay that kind of money. That's not what I'm doing it for. She goes, no. Brian says you're in for free. You're everything except for your airfare is taken care of. I'm thinking, too good to be true. No way. But my wife's sitting right next to me. My wife's name is Stormy. Forrest, Stormy, those are our real names. And she goes, you have to do it. This is what you've been saying. This is what you teach. I'm like, all right, yes, I'm in. So I go on this trip. I show up, and I don't know if I'm going to walk into they're going to try to pitch me some, I'm buying a cabin somewhere, or, some timeshare, so I have no idea, but I know I'm taking a risk, because it's something I really wanted to do. I walk in, and it's this little reception area, and Brian walks right up to me and goes, you must be the guy that's been charming all my secretaries. And I was like, I just wanted to meet you. And he's like, hit me. So I just told him, thank you, and I meant it. I made sure that it came from a real place, right? How it changed my life, told him my story. And he was like, well, I'm glad you're here. So for the next 4 days, we spent this time with these 12 business owners that are ridiculously wealthy. Like, I made me look like a little bitty fish in a great big pond. And they're all 50 and 100 millionaires, and Brian, I don't even know, maybe I have no idea what he's worth, but a lot. The guy makes $50,000 an hour to speak, right? And at the end of it, he says, there's about, by the way, at this time I had never done any public speaking. I was terrified. When I tell you, like, throw up, sick, sweat kind of thing, it was like my biggest fear. And Brian says, I have about 50 people a year that come up and tell me they're going to be the next Brian Tracy. And I just smile and I nod. He said, but about once a decade I meet somebody that should be the next Brian Tracy. Forrest, that's you. Totally ugly cried in front of him, right? Because it was like the greatest compliment that this man that I look up to so much could give me. And he goes, how'd you like to write a book with me? And I had told my wife before I left that I wanted to write a book with Brian Tracy, but I hadn't spoken the words to him. It's not a coincidence. I told her, I said, I'm going to find a way to write a book with him. I didn't know how, but he all of a sudden out of his mouth, based on the connection I developed, based on a lot of these principles, how'd you like to write a book with me? Yes. And then was the scariest process of my life. I only had 4 weeks to turn in my portion of this book, just to be able to write this book with him. And it was terrifying, because you all of a sudden thinking, there could be millions of people that read this, and you start thinking about being embarrassed. Embarrassment is one of the most powerful emotions in the world. Embarrassment has caused more divorces, more murders, more, I mean, when I tell you the fear of embarrassment, not even being embarrassed, the fear of potentially being embarrassed will stop people from taking the one thing that will get them to their dreams. I've almost turned around while standing in front of, getting ready to go out on a stage, looked at the exit sign and gone, I can still make it out. Because you don't want to be embarrassed. It goes back, I've become that 6-year-old little kid getting on the school bus, and I'm terrified of that. We all have that somewhere in us. So I turn in my thing, and it ends up doing well, and it becomes a bestseller, mainly because of Brian, which is this part over here, social proof. See, nobody might read Forrest Hamilton's book. It was Brian Tracy's book. I just happened to be a co-author. So I did what's called coattailing. I just wrote on the coats of somebody already very successful. Because if Brian's willing to put my face on the cover of his book with him, I must be worth reading, right? So it's not about downplaying myself. It was I wanted to write this book, and then that book turned into another book. And that book, anybody ever see Jerry Maguire, the movie Jerry Maguire? It's a good movie. You should all watch it. It's a Tom Cruise movie, and Cuba Gooding Jr. But it's about a real person. It's about a guy named Lee Steinberg, who's the top NFL agent of all time. He has more #1 NFL draft picks than anybody in the world, ever. And I think most of them combined. And I mean, he had like Troy Aikmans and Ben Roethlisberger's, and before he went off the deep end. But he was this amazing agent. In fact, they have a book out called The Agent, and it's about him, how he started the sports agency business. So this book that's got Lee Steinberg in it. It's got Brian Tracy in it. It's got this guy, Robert Allen, who wrote a book called Multiple Streams of Income. Changed how I invest very early in my life. They're all in that because Brian said, hey, let's write another book. That one went well. It's okay. He said, who'd you like to get in it? I said, what do you mean? He goes, I mean, if you could like wave a magic wand and have some other really cool authors that you got to meet and got to know, who would it be? I thought, he's like a genie. I'm making a wish for the people that I wish I could get to know. And all of a sudden it's happening for me. It's as though it's happening for me. And when I tell you all this, again, this is not about, yay me, this is what if you could do this. I told my daughter, I have 3 daughters now, and when she was 6, 7, her favorite TV show was Shark Tank. Anybody ever see Shark Tank? Right? So we'd rather watch that than Disney. It's fun, right? We love business valuation, we love the sharks, we love the whole interaction. And I tell my daughter, hey, I'm going to be on Shark Tank. She's like, Dad, you can't just be on Shark Tank. 8 months later, I'm on Shark Tank. It wasn't because I was like, I had some great idea, because that was the plan. My wife goes, what are you going to sell? I said, I have no idea. But what I did is I put it out into the universe. I started telling everybody that I knew, because there's people in here, right now, you're sitting next to somebody you have no clue. We all have a really cool story, whether you know it or not. And there's somebody in this room right now that knows somebody that could get you exactly what you want. The job that you want. How many times have I seen somebody, oh yeah, he introduced me to my wife for 20 years now, and got all these, but it's because they're right next to you. And so what I did is I started reaching out and telling people, hey, I'm going to be on Shark Tank. And everybody was like, really, how and why? I said, I have no idea, but I just know I'm going to be on there. And then one day I said it to somebody, I go, hey, if you know of anybody to get me on Shark Tank, that'd be awesome. He's like, who told you? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, nobody's supposed to know, there's a gag order. I go, you mean you're going to be on Shark Tank? He goes, yeah. I go, awesome. Well, how do I get on there? He goes, would you come on there with me? It's not luck. You can think it's luck, you can think it's coincidence. But what happens is, you apply these things and you believe in them, and it's insane how your life will change. I said told some people I wanted to make a movie. We ended up doing a movie with Jake Hoffman, Dustin Hoffman's son, Nikki Reed from Twilight, Jason Priestley, 90210, Scott Bakula, NCIS, and a bunch of other shows. These were all the actors that ended up being in our first movie. I wanted to meet some professional golfers. So I said, hey, let's make like a golf documentary. So we're doing one called Be the Ball. And they said, hey, do you want to make a list of all the people to do some interviews with? I was like, yeah. So we got Samuel Jackson. We got Bill Murray, who's from the original Caddyshack, Be the Ball. We got Michelle Lee. We've got Jerry Rice. These are I got basically made a list of the people that I would like to meet and interview for this movie that we're making. All we did was make a decision to go make a movie. There was no funding necessary, we were just making this decision. And as you start to reach out, the world kind of moves for you guys. So here's the lesson. People's ability to understand the factors that affect their behavior is surprisingly poor. We think that we are just, anybody ever say, oh, I'm terrible with names? Or, I'm terrible with remembering names. You're cementing that in your mind. I know, because I used to be that way. I used to be terrible with names. But then one day I took a course on how to remember names, and it's amazing. All of a sudden I can remember names now. No, I just made a decision that I wasn't going to accept that weakness inside of myself. I was meeting a lot of people, I couldn't remember any of their names. Like 2 minutes later I was like, John? No, Steve. I had no clue. And I kept saying I'm terrible with names. Well, what if you could do that with all these other things in your life? I'm poor. Keep saying that. You'll stay poor. I'm probably going to grow up and end up, never get married, never find the person who I dreamed. You keep doing that, and you're going to keep planting it. You are influencing yourself, whether you know it or not. So, commitment facts. People don't like to back out of things, especially if they've given that commitment verbally or in writing. Once an employer, friend, or teammate acknowledges something is important to them, they feel committed and obligated to follow through. So how does that work? How do you create commitment in somebody you don't know? Let's think of a fun one. Well, I'll just use this one for now. This guy, Thomas Moriarty, he staged this New York City beach theft. So what they do is they have a researcher would put out a beach blanket, and then they'd have somebody lay down on it that was part of their crew, right? And they would have like a radio that was playing next to them. And then when somebody else would come up and lay down their little towel, they'd just get up and walk away, right? The person that has the towel with the radio playing on it. And then they would have somebody else that was staged run up, steal the radio, and run away. And I think it was less than 4 out of 20 challenged the thief. 4 out of 20 were like, hey, stop, or ran after him. 4 out of 20. Then they did one little bitty thing. They said, hey. So they restaged it. Person lay back down with their little radio. They said, hey, will you please watch my things? Hey, I got to run the restroom. Will you watch this real quick? Anybody ever do that when they got a bag or something? I gotta run. Will you watch this? You feel tied to it. You're committed. You're going to walk away? People miss their flights. They don't want to walk away. Right? Because they're committed. Look what the, does it say on here yet? It ended up being 19 of the 20 subjects ran after and stopped the thief with one verbal commitment. Hey, will you watch my stuff? They don't know their name even. But they created a small commitment. So how do you get commitment in the world? Right? So if you've noticed, there's been a few cues that I've done. Little bitty things that I do when I do these talks. I've had you raise your hand. There's a commitment inside of that. It's embarrassing. Whatever. Who is this guy? But what happens is you start to become involved. Involvement, engagement, commitment are all part of the same thing. So what happens is, like, if you can get a girl or a guy, regardless, if you're wanting to go on a date with somebody and you say, hey, want to go out with me? Nope. All right, that's sweet. Right? There's no commitment there. But if you can get them using a little bit of the endearing, whatever, there's lots of different methods. There's not one method that works for everybody. I've seen some of the most ridiculous stuff in the world work, and people end up dating or even getting married. I mean, it's unreal, some of the stuff. You see the guy and he is just a jerk, right? But somehow he walked because he risked. And you don't know what that girl's dealing with at that time, and he risked it, and she recognized it, and somehow through all the awkwardness there was a moment of realness. And that realness is usually what attracts. People will do things because they'll commit because they believe you can solve a problem that they have, ease some kind of pain, or add something to their life. That's really it. If you read any sales book, if you read any engagement connection book, there's about 3 reasons people do things. That they want to have an interaction with you. It's because they feel like you can solve a problem they have, ease some kind of pain they have, or add something to their life that they wish they had. That's what creates the connection. That's what creates this commitment, is when they buy into that. And somewhere along the way, you're doing it already without knowing it. Right now, my youngest is 5. And we call her the Tasmanian devil, because there is no middle ground with this child. She is her name's Trinity. She's the third daughter. My wife says that I have 3 girls because it's karma for a misspent 20s and 30s, right? But there's these amazing children, right? And we raised them the same, 10, 8, and 5. We raised these children the same. And they are so different. Even though we were influencing them all the time, they are their own person. Well, this 5-year-old of mine, she's a mess. Like, she's the one that will say, when she was 3, she'd go, "Daddy, sucker? Daddy, do you have a sucker?" And I'd say, "No, baby, it's like 9 p.m. It's time to go to bed, right? Please, can I have a sucker?" "No, no, you can't have a sucker." "I want a sucker now!" "No, you're not having a sucker. You can go sit in timeout," right? Right? 3 minutes later, I see her and she's, "You got the sucker, right?" Like, what? Where did you get the sucker? Stormy! Did you give her this sucker? She's like, "No." She did ask me and I told her no. I was like, "Taylor, my oldest, how'd you get the sucker?" "Oh, she just climbed up to the top of the pantry and got it." This thing's like 8 feet in the air, right? She was not going to be denied. She used lots of different methods. She was willing to risk the repercussion of getting that sucker. Now, Taylor, my oldest, is different. She'll say, "Dad, can I have a sucker?" "No, baby, it's too late." "I promise I'll be good." "I know, but then if you do it, then your sisters are going to see it, and they're going to want me to, and they won't be good." She said, "That's a good point. What if I have a sucker, I give each of them a half a sucker, and I make sure that they're really good too?" "No. And if we're not good, we won't have sugar for a week." Okay. I mean, she doesn't give up. She recognizes the methods of influence. She recognized when I was slightly weak on my no. She gets it. It's unbelievable. And somebody says, "Aren't you worried?" Because like some other adults will see her persuade me to do something or even manipulate me sometimes, right? And she'll get something that she wanted. Like, "Aren't you worried she's just going to be able to get everything?" I said, "No, that's why I'm doing it. I want to raise my children to where they can get anything they set their mind on." It's on my responsibility to make sure they understand the difference in right and wrong. When I hire people that come work for me, I work at Universal Coin and Bullion. It's a local gold company. Been there over 20 years. That's my primary business. And when I hire somebody to come work for me, I tell them, I'm going to teach you how to sell, but the first thing I'm going to do is teach you how to influence. I'm going to teach you about where you are with your mind now, what you believe about yourself, and then I'm going to give you a superpower. But you have to promise to use it for good. Because once you learn the methods of influence, you can manipulate if you choose to. And it's very tempting to manipulate. Because it's so much easier sometimes to just do this little path and get what you want. But I've learned it the hard way. Almost every scenario, I've been married 11 years now, and almost every negative scenario has happened with my wife because either I went to manipulate or she went to. And you know it in your core. And you just want to get something for you. Alright? So, I'm definitely not going to get through all these, so like I said, I still will email it to you. It's forrest@forresthamilton.com. Just send me an email and then say you were here, request all the slides, and I'll get them to you. So the other method is authority. This is, again, Dr. Robert Cialdini. Authority, he does an experiment. This is a pretty cool story. Robert Cialdini was this guy that was going to school, and he said, he's a teacher, I think either Stanford or Harvard, one of the big schools, and Stanford. And he said, "I want to study this thing, influence." And so he went undercover for like 10 years. Did like a year at each different job to test car salesmen. He went and checked on religions, like dove into religions to see how are they influencing people. What are the methods that are commonalities between them to try to understand it. His research was unbelievable to understand it, and it was synthesized down to these 6 lessons that I teach here. One of the ones that he did is he went and they had somebody where they would say, "Hey, go put a dime in that parking meter over there." And it was just a random person dressed like this. And people were like, whatever. And like less than half of them would do it. Then they'd put that same person in like a rent-a-cop costume. It wasn't even like a legit costume. They'd be like, "Hey, go put same voice, same everything, go put a dime in that parking meter over there." They'd go, "Oh, yes, sir." And it was like 9 out of 10 people did it because they had a perceived authority. I met a guy that's connected me to some pretty amazing people all over who is he was on ABC's Secret Millionaire, and he's the best I've ever seen at capitalizing on fame. He basically had this before, during, and after plan. He knew he was going to have like this 15 minutes of fame, but he didn't want 15 minutes of fame. He wanted like to change people's lives and make millions of dollars in the process. So he got this plan together, and he did it, and it worked really well, and now he's a business coach, and he makes millions of dollars a weekend. It's a joke. But he does good work. And what he figured out is he went on the show, the ABC's Secret Millionaire, and as he got on there, and he gave away some of his own money and things like that, but what he did great is he packaged the emotion. He figured out if he could connect to people and get them connected, he didn't even have to be brilliant for them to believe in themselves. So he started to do things like he threw these big boot camps, but it wasn't like a military boot camp. It was a boot camp of celebrities. And he'd bring them all together, teach them how to become public speakers, or teach them how to become authors, things that they always wanted. I know quite a few celebrities, they all wish that they were athletes. I know quite a few professional athletes, they all wish that they were rock stars. Everybody wants something that they don't